Donald Trump has had a very busy week, reuniting with Elon Musk at Charlie Kirk's memorial, claiming paracetamol causes autism, and went full attack mode at the UN. Our US correspondent Freddie Hayward was there and wrote, "Speeches were supposed to last 15 minutes. Trump rattled on for close to an hour." Freddie, tell us what it was like sitting through that hour-long tirade.
Slightly surreal, I must say. I mean, Unger Week is, I would say, an international party conference. So it's similar to Labour conference in that there are parties everywhere and there are side panels and that sort of thing. And then there's the big leader's speech. And this was the big leader's speech. This was the speech of our dear leader, Donald. The room
and there was you thinking you could get away from party conferences by leaving the Westminster team.
I tried my best. The atmosphere was very strange. I think lots of people are now used to Donald Trump being quite outrageous. Remember, this is 10 years in. It's not like it was when it was in 2017. It was the first time he went to the UN. He was quite insecure. People were laughing at him. There was this sense that there was this new kid on the block and he was trying to provoke them. This time we knew what was coming, and Trump delivered this excoriating and purposely offensive speech, and he really seemed to enjoy doing it. So people were laughing and shaking their heads, and then laughing again and shaking their heads, because what was so powerful about it was that he was attacking the very raison d'etre, the purpose, the core mission of the UN. He seemed to be needling them to such an extent that he wanted to undermine the institution itself.
Yeah, and let's go through some of the most provocative things that he said. It was sort of like the greatest hits, wasn't it? On climate change, he said, it's the greatest con job ever perpetrated on the world. He said London wanted to go to Sharia law under its terrible mayor, Sadiq Khan, who he's had a long-running feud with over the years. He said Europe was in serious trouble over immigration. And also, he asked, what is the purpose of the UN? And actually, I think you focused on that part of his speech in your piece. And tell me why you thought that was the line that stood out for you, because I think you make the argument that he does sort of have a point.
Well, he has a point in the fact that it's a good question. We should be asking what is the purpose of the UN, and it's changed a lot in the past decade or so. Trump seems to be undermining the liberal internationalism of the UN. So that's the idea that the UN's purpose is to promote free trade, to promote free and fair elections, to promote human rights. Trump, as we know, doesn't have that great an affinity with those types of concepts. And the UN has always been led by the US. It's been the most generous donor. It's provided the moral leadership. You look back to 91 and evicting Saddam Hussein from Kuwait, it's also provided the military leadership. So without the US being there, taking the lead, backing up the UN's core purpose, then it starts to erode. It becomes a different institution. And I try and make this point by looking at this difference between the first UN and the second UN. The first UN is from a political scientist in the late 90s who came up with this distinction. The first UN is the secretariat, the agencies, those staffers based in New York and Geneva, what we really think when we think of the UN. And they're led by the Secretary General. The second UN is the Forum of Nations, the member states, and then usually led by the most powerful nations. It seems that by undermining the UN to such an extent, Trump is taking away the moral purpose of the UN, the first UN. Without the US saying, okay, we're going to provide money to the Secretary General and his secretariat, we're going to provide moral backing, they lack the gravitas, they lack the ballast to be a big player on the world stage. Kofi Annan used to be constantly on the phone with George Bush and others and directing affairs. It's not as if Antonio Guterres has had that same role. Trump only really goes to see him during this week at UNGA. Trump intentionally mocked the conflict resolution aspect of the UN during his speech. He said, I'm the one solving all these wars. I'm the one bringing about this peace. And the UN didn't even bother to call me. I don't know whether that's true or not. And Guterres has certainly said this week that he wants to cooperate with the US more. But it just goes to show that Trump doesn't see the UN as providing the leadership that it once did.
Yeah, it was interesting watching this speech, actually, following his state visit to the UK, which was actually quite a warm affair. You've written a great piece about that as well, and how, in your analysis, it was more of a humiliation for the UK, and that's something that we spoke about on the podcast recently. But that was quite. There were quite warm relations on show between Trump and Keir Starmer, obviously of very different political persuasions. He did mention, the problem of, in his eyes, illegal migration in the UK, and that's something that he echoed in this speech, saying that immigration will be the death of Western Europe. But I mean, is this a sort of different type of Trump than the Trump who goes around, and does and can behave more diplomatically with the leaders that he deems worthy of it?
I don't think so, no. I think this is the same Trump. There was an interesting moment. By tradition, Brazil speaks first. And that meant that President Lula, who has been a strong critic of Trump and vice versa, spoke just before Trump came on stage. And once Trump entered the hall, he said, "Oh, I've got all these comments where I was going to hit Brazil and hit Lula, and now it's very awkward because I really like the guy. We got on very well for 35 seconds." And he found it hilarious. He was like, "Isn't that funny?" And it was amusing. But I think it just goes to show that Trump is quite happy having a personal relationship with people,
Right.
and at the same time attacking them. He attacked Keir Starmer in his speech for not drilling more oil and gas in the North Sea. I
Yeah.
think he sees it as not friendly advice, but he wouldn't say, well, he wouldn't think that because we have a good relationship, I shouldn't criticize the UK for immigration or oil and gas or whatever it might be. So I don't think he sees the two as incompatible.
Hmm. And you also note that he kind of completely pulled focus from the comments in this speech with comments about Ukraine and Russia shortly afterwards. Can you explain what he was saying there? It's been a busy week for you, hasn't it?
It has, yeah. So Trump sent this post on Truth Social in which he pivoted on Ukraine. He's been saying for a long time now that Ukraine need to recognize the fact that they've lost a lot of territory and they're not going to get it back. Now he was saying, well, maybe Ukraine can get all of their territory back and maybe even go even further, which was a remarkable thing to say because the implication is that he means that Ukraine should take some of Russia's territory. So the question is, how seriously should we take this? Zelensky said yesterday that this was a big moment, a big shift, and it mattered a lot. It seems that the tactic from Trump is still the same, that he will allow America to sell weapons to NATO and then NATO can ship them over to Ukraine. So it doesn't sound like he's going to change that policy. But in terms of temperament, in terms of the general approach from the Americans, this is much more supportive of Ukraine and much more critical of Putin. This seems to me to be the culmination of a general move away from Putin this journey that Trump's been on for the past 6 months or so, once he's realized that Putin isn't that keen on a ceasefire. The other thing that it might be about, but I'm not sure because Trump refuses to be definitive on this or even supportive, is the number of Russian drones and planes entering NATO airspace. Maybe that was part of his decision. We don't know. He also said something interesting yesterday. He said that when he was asked should European nations shoot down Russian jets if they enter their airspace, he said yes, they should. But then when he was pressed on whether the US would be there to support NATO countries in a subsequent war, he was less certain. So, as always, I don't think we should focus too much on what he actually says. We should focus on the weapons that are being shipped across the Atlantic.
Yeah. And there's been a number of things that he's been up to since then. He attended Charlie Kirk's memorial and he reunited with Musk for the first time. I mean, what does that tell you, his reunion with Elon Musk?
I think it tells you that if someone apologizes to Trump, he will very quickly forgive them. He's done that multiple times. People come and go from the administration. I mean, JD Vance obviously is the most prominent example of that. Let's see. I mean, it seems to me that Musk has been burnt and therefore won't want to go into politics, but he doesn't really need to go into politics to hand out a lot of money in the run up to the midterms. So that's the main thing I'd be looking at.
Yeah, he looks more interested in going into politics in the UK at the moment.
Yeah. Well, Ed Davey wants to arrest him, so let's see how that goes.
That could be, a great Ed Davey stunt, really, in a
The very liberal
uniform.
Democrats.
Yeah. And something that I've been looking into was this really quite random announcement about Tylenol, which is what Americans call paracetamol.
It did take me a while to
Trump
work
made.
that out, I must say.
Yeah. I mean, it was quite strange because what he was saying was Tylenol is no good for pregnant women. They should fight like hell not to take it and tough it out if they're in pain or have a temperature during pregnancy. And this is from a review of some studies that suggest an association between the active ingredient in the painkiller and autism in some children. But doctors, have been insisting that there is no evidence that shows that Tylenol causes autism, and that these comments that Trump made are actually quite dangerous because paracetamol is basically the only thing that you can take for relief during pregnancy, and it's not appropriate health advice. And it's something that really caught my eye and I wanted to write about because it really struck me as part of this trend that you've seen, particularly on the sort of American kind of wellness right, if you can put it like that, for basically suggesting that you're not a proper mother or a proper pregnant lady unless you're suffering, unless you're willing to sacrifice your comfort, your health, your safety, your well-being. And it's just part of a pattern that I noticed sort of in mainstream NHS settings when I was pregnant in the UK, from the kind of veneration of breastfeeding to natural birth propaganda to, all of these sort of grave warnings against sleep training and ultra processed food and, all of this type of thing, which, only serves to make you feel guilty when you're pregnant or when you're giving birth or when you're a mother because you haven't, suffered to the required degree to really show that you've taken on board the mother's sacrifice that all of these kind of messages try and force upon you when you're in that part of your life. So it struck me as it's just another part of that pattern.
Yeah, this is all part of the Make America Healthy Again agenda. It seems that some of the reporting coming out after the press conference suggests that this wasn't really the plan, which I don't think people should be surprised about. The plan was to announce a series of reviews and new studies over the next year or so, and Trump ad-libbed and went off script and started saying that the connection between the medicine and autism is much greater than they have proven. So again, I mean, it recalls and is reminiscent of the COVID press conferences where staffers were holding their heads in their hands as Trump gave medical advice, not just to the US, but to the entire world. So I think they'll be trying to avoid a repeat of that in the future.